Hey everyone, if we haven't met before, I'm Alex Norman. I'm the co-founder of TechTO. I'm an operator with several exits, done a bit of professional services, and I'm an active investor as a partner at N49P. We host Founders and Funding to help demystify the fundraising process and the relationship between investors and founders. We are excited for today's conversation with Marty, co-founder and CEO of Blockthrough, and Roy, angel investor and GM at Calendar Hero. Um, you know, both have a long history being involved with the ecosystem, and I think we're going to have a lot to learn today. But before we get started, if you haven't found it yet, there's a chat on the side of your screen. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us why you're here. Tell us something about what you're doing. There's also emojis that you can blast across the screen. It's like virtual applause. So give us some feedback and to let us know how we're doing. And then finally, two last things. If you want to meet the community, get to know other founders, other people in the community, stay around after we have this conversation to join in networking. And for any insightful piece of advice that changes your mind about how you're building your business, share it on social media using the hashtag TechTO. Now let's get started. Marty and Roy, please come to the stage. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with you, Marty. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Blockthrough does?
Yeah, so I'm a third-time founder. First one was how do you call it? A learning experience, pure learning experience. Second one, we'll call it a bunt single. And then Blockthrough is number three. Started Blockthrough in late 2015 with the goal of helping online publishers to recover the revenue they lose due to ad blocking software, and to do it in a way that doesn't piss users off. So that's sort of Blockthrough's mission. Did you want me to dive into the story a little bit or save that for later?
Maybe let's get that in a bit. Let's just get the introductions
Cool.
done first now. Roy, um, you know, knowing you as a founder, we've had you talk about building companies before, but you're an angel investor. So tell us why you do that and how you decide where to invest.
Yeah, I've been in the tech business for quite some time, and after a couple of exits, I decided to help the existing ecosystem by doing both coaching, but also investing as well. And Marty and Blockthrough are one of my portfolio companies, and I'm also on the board of directors. So that's how I can add even more value to Marty and also the company.
So just want to hear about the company. Want to hear the story. But one last question, Roy. How do you decide what to invest in?
Hmm. That is the $1 million question, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, you think you can see what's interesting. You have a better finger on the pulse of technology and what's going on. But really, in the end, it's actually about people, right? And the main reason why I got involved with Marty was because of Marty. The funny story was that I was exiting my last startup. I was working for the company that acquired us, and I had no interest in being part of this industry anymore. It was ad tech, and I was just ready to leave. And Marty came around and he begged and he followed me, harassed me, and basically impressed me. And I decided to not only invest but also advise. And the rest is history, as they say. That was a long time ago. Well, it was 7 years ago or so, 8 years ago maybe. So it's
Wow.
really people, and it's as any angel investor, as an entrepreneur, that first angel pitch is about you and your team. And if you flip it around and you're an angel investor, you're looking for the team. Are these the right people to get to success?
Okay, that's very insightful, and I love your perspective because usually we have VCs telling what they look for, and it's good to get an operating angel's perspective. Marty, let's go back and tell us the story behind the founding of Blockthrough and what you started and what's going on now.
Yeah, happy to. So, rewinding back, it was 6 years ago, Roy. Rewinding back 6 years in time, my co-founder Chris Piper and I, we started the company, as I mentioned before, with the goal of helping online publishers to recover the revenue they lose due to ad blocking software, but to do that in a way that users can accept and are okay with. And I think we came at it from a really unique perspective because we didn't have an advertising or publishing background. We were both first and foremost ad blocking users who were also previous startup founders. And when you think about those two backgrounds, being past business owners, we naturally understood that publishers, like any business, need to make money. And like it or not, ads are how they do that on the internet. At the same time, being ad blocking users ourselves, we also intuitively understood that the vast majority of us are not militant ad haters. We're just regular old users who are really fed up with a handful of obnoxious experiences on the web, like pre-roll ads on YouTube, for example. And we're savvy enough to install a browser extension or a mobile browser to protect ourselves from those types of annoying experiences. And unfortunately, back when we started the company, the baby was getting thrown out with bathwater. Even the innocent little banner on the side of the page that didn't do no harm to nobody was getting blocked out too. And that combination of insights is really what created drove our philosophy on the topic, which was that if we could figure out a way to deliver a really light advertising experience to ad block users by default, but in a way that allowed them to opt out if they were amongst the militant ad haters out there, then we could create a sustainable internet where our favorite content creators can make good money without annoying us. And so that's really where everything started. Like any good startup, our first attempt at getting that formula right was deeply flawed, and it took us a couple of years to figure that out. Our first iteration of the product, and I think, Alex, this is when I pitched you on this, and you declined to invest, was we were originally doing ad block circumvention software. In other words, we developed tech that was able to bypass ad blockers and deliver a light ad experience despite the ad blocker. And as we learned over those first 2 years, that just had a number of fundamental flaws associated with it that just made it virtually impossible to build a sustainable business on top of. And so for that reason, we didn't have a lot of angels put in money in us, or anybody put in money in us over those first 2 years. I think we raised maybe a total of 250, 300 grand over that time span. And really the only people who put money in at that time were folks like Roy, who believed in us as a team, not necessarily the approach that we were trying to make work. And so that it was that low point, sort of mid to late 2017, where nothing was working. We were constantly running out of cash. I think there was a period of 2 years where we never had more than 3 or 4 months of cash in the bank, where our backs were against the wall, and we believed in our philosophy, but we figured out that we were going about it the wrong way. And so we made a big pivot. We didn't change fundamentally what problem the business solves, but we changed our approach from trying to circumvent the ad blockers to instead trying to build a relationship with them and solving the problem collaboratively. So we teamed up with the parent company of AdBlock Plus on an initiative that was called Acceptable Ads. Basically a lighter, stricter standard for advertising that, based on research they had done, was kosher as far as their users were concerned. And that standard was being governed by an independent committee called the Acceptable Ads Committee. And so we sort of looked at this acceptable ad standard, and we realized that there was no easy way for independent publishers in the open web, so everybody from CNN on down, to adhere to this stricter standard for advertising. And so we pivoted our technology from bypassing ad blockers to filtering the ads that a publisher would serve to adhere with this stricter standard for advertising that ad block users are okay with.
Interesting.
And so we ended up launching that in March of 2018. When we launched it, we had something like 29 days of cash left in the bank. So this was the Hail Mary pass, the last stand. I remember, kvetching with over beers with Roy about how little cash we had left in the bank at that point in time. And literally the financing model to that point in time was like, get another angel check to buy you another month, get another one to buy you 2 months. And then basically we launched it, and we went from 0 to $1 million ARR in less than 7 months. And it's been 3.5 years since that fateful day. And we've grown from 0 to a run rate of over 10 million a year net. We're now 42 people. Along the way, we raised a couple $1 million, primarily angels, a couple strategics, and a couple very small funds that invest like angels. We've gotten to this point just on those 2 million. We've been profitable most of the way. We've acquired a couple competitors, and we were recently named the 11th fastest growing company in Canada by the Globe and Mail. you know, and now,
Congratulations.
thank you, and work with something like 25 of the top 100 publishers in the U.S. So CNN, MSN, BuzzFeed, Vox, AccuWeather, etc.
Cool. Now I want to get double click on stuff, but from Roy's perspective. So Roy,
Yeah.
when did you write that first check?
Oh, super early. I don't know how early, if I was one of the first three investors or something, but quite early. And again, it was about the people, and about people will figure out the path to success, right? And it's not about what they were thinking about at the moment. It was about the problem space. And I understood the problem space really well. I was in ad tech, and I myself don't click on ads. I find that people, I don't know, don't really click on ads, mostly bots. But even though I was in ad
You're
tech,
not clicking on the jumping monkey that's trying to sell you a new credit card?
no. So what Marty's story sort of showcases is the fact that startups are really about experiments. You don't know how to be successful yet. You know that there's a problem. Hopefully it's a big enough problem that people will pay you for. But Marty just has this determination. And I remember when he told me over beers that he was making this deal and he was changing how the system actually worked. And I almost had a heart attack. It was like such a massive change. And it meant that we were exiting the highway that we were on and maybe going onto another highway, maybe going into a ditch. It was like either, 100% positive or 100% negative.
So how do you handle that as an angel? Like you're thinking that, did you share that thoughts with Marty? Or
Yeah,
what
I
are you
did.
thinking at
I
that
did.
point?
Well, first off, as an angel, the money that you put into a company is gone, and you should think about that. It's, don't expect a return. It's gone. If you get your dollar back, that's fantastic. If you get $2, you're rare. It's a rare event. And so I wasn't thinking about losing the money. I was thinking more about the success of Marty and the team, because they had worked so hard on figuring out the problem. I didn't want it. That's where really I was thinking this could be the breakthrough. And so it was like, yeah, let's try it out. Our heads against the wall. I saw coming back and trying to figure out how to get more funding because their numbers weren't going up. So why not? A startup is about experimenting, and if you're not hitting it out of the ballpark, it's time to try something new. That's exactly what he did, and most entrepreneurs that I talk to don't make that change because they're scared of making the change. And so Marty did. And here we are today, very successful because of that.
Cool. So as an angel investor, how do you participate and help the founder other than going for, it seems like you go for, with you and Marty go for beers every once in a while. And what's your role? What do you view your role as? Is it a coach? Is it a passive supporter? What's your perspective? And Roy, I'd love to hear your perspective, and then Marty, after that, I'd like to hear what you expect from your angel investors.
I think angel investors that are also entrepreneurs have a different perspective. I know what I want from my investors. Sometimes I don't want anything other than their money, but a lot of times I would like advice. I would like maybe customer intros, but also advice, because as a CEO, you don't really have other peers around you helping you out. You have your entire team looking at you going, what should we do? And so you really need that sounding board. And investors could definitely be that if they understand your industry, if they understand being a CEO. Obviously, the rest of your peer organization, like say in Toronto's tech community or in Canada's tech community, could also help. And I think that is super important. I think as entrepreneurs, we forget about that, and we're trying to do this by ourselves all the time. And then there's a lot of mental health issues that we get into because there's just so much work and there's nobody to talk to about it. And so as an angel investor, but that's also an entrepreneur, I'm hoping that my value is that I've been there, and so I can help Marty through it.
Cool. And then Marty, what do you expect?
I think it really depends on the angel. I mean, the first place my head goes is like, there's I can't remember where I took this from, but there's this, like, the classic like 4 square matrix, the graph with the 4 quadrants, like smart money, dumb money, and then like active, inactive, and like the sweet spot is like you want smart money that's helping you out proactively.
Yeah.
But like barring that, like you kind of just want them to like give you the money and like not take up too much of your time. And so like, from my perspective, whenever we were taking angel money, we really wanted, first and foremost, we wanted somebody who might be able to help us and who's willing to do that. But secondly, if they just wanted to put money in, they like us, they like the company, and they don't have huge call them reporting requirements. That's like the 2 types of angel investor that we found were probably in our most desired category, if that makes sense. So I think somebody who's going to be understanding of and when it comes to both of these, I think there's some other qualities that matter, right? You want investors who are going to be understanding of the fact that it's not always a straight line. If you look at the last 3 years growth, it looks like a straight line if you annualize it, but the 2.5 years prior to that were shit. They sucked. And then during those 3.5 years of rocket ship growth, there was like a quarter here, a quarter there that was terrible. And you want folks who are going to be understanding of that and have your back through thick and through thin. And sometimes having your back means just like letting you execute. Sometimes it means like giving you tactical advice when you seek it. And with Roy, I think certainly there was a lot of tactical advice. There was a lot of strategic advice. He knew our space. So he was, just to be clear, Roy was in the category of smart money who was able to help and willing to help. Go ahead.
If this is what you're looking for, like when someone wants to give you a check, do you interview them? How do you qualify someone? Like, do you take any angels check, or how do you qualify her? What's the process of when you were raising to, it sounds like, I guess, there's a saying, beggars can't be choosers, but we're all begging when we're raising, but we also want to be choosy. So how do you navigate that and make that work?
Honestly, what I learned over the first 2.5 years is most of that qualification happens before you even connect with an angel. Meaning there was, when I finally got serious about, raising, or when I finally got, call it good at it, what helped me level up was just getting smart about qualifying people before I reaching out to angels who had a track record of investing in our space. Coming from ad tech, which was the redheaded stepchild of fundraising 5 years ago, we basically just decided not to go after any angel after a period of time. After like the first year and a half, after we got 1,000 no's, we realized that like there was just no point to talking to anyone unless it was opportunistic and somebody just put us in touch. We just wouldn't even talk to them unless we felt they could invest in our category. So that's number one. I think the second is like what types of questions they ask, and like how do they ask them? Like is it clear that they care about your ability to execute as a founder, or are they just trying to unicorn hunt? If they're just trying to unicorn hunt, maybe what you're working on is potentially obvious unicorn territory. But if it's not, like you're not going to be able to attract those investors. It's just not, you're not in their category, in their wheelhouse. So really understanding what kind of business do you have? Are you talking to the types of investors that would invest in your type of profile of business? And then just through the questions that they ask, do they care just about financial outcomes, or are they also investing in the founder? And does it feel like you'll have their support through thick and through thin?
Cool. And then talking about thick or thin, let's go back to that moment where you had like 30 days runway left.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were having a drink with Roy.
Yes.
And
many
what was going? Many drinks. And Roy, what was going through your mind, and what did you want to do to help Marty out at that point? Do you remember, or is it just too many drinks?
Nah, funny. So Marty and I have had lots of those conversations, because that 3 days of cash or 5 days of cash or 15 days of cash that's happened multiple times. And Marty's cash issues are not unique to Marty or Blockthrough, right? I've gone through them with some of my previous startups, and I know lots and lots and lots and lots of startups in the city that have hit there that now are very, very successful. So it's normal. But to answer your question specifically, I felt bad for Marty because, again, Marty has worked so hard, and things just weren't working out. And sometimes it is what it is, right? We've all been there. We've all gone home on a Friday thinking about, how do I tell my team on Monday that we're turning the lights off? And it is soul crushing as an entrepreneur, because you care about your team, because you've picked them. And it sort of changes you for sure, but it also pushes you to try harder. And Marty tried harder. And that's the comment that I would give. Who else can we hit up for some funding, right? Who's on your investor pipeline, that sort of thing, right? But then also, why isn't it working? Why aren't the revenues coming in, right? So it's time to really look at those hard questions and be realistic about it, right?
Yeah. And Marty, so from your perspective, how do you break the news? How many angel investors do you have at that point, and how do you work with all of them to share the perspective?
So at that point in time, I think we had probably a dozen or so. And depending on my relationship with them, some of them I reached back out to see if they could throw in another check to keep us afloat. Sam Zaid, I think, we talked about, Alex, when I was pitching you, that Sam Zaid was one of our investors. There were, both of the times that he put in money, were times when it was crucial and made a big difference. And he also rallied other folks in his circle to put in some money as well. And so, there were some angels that I could call up and be like, hey, like, shit's really hard right now. We're running out of cash, but like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Can you help us out? And some of them would do it. And there were other angels where I felt like I couldn't do that, where I knew if I called them up, they would just like be terrified and start asking more questions and take up more of my time. So I think, in terms of communication with angels, I think you need to understand, like, what bucket do they fall into? Are they going to be the kinds of people who support you and help you, or are they going to like freak out about the 20K that they put in and not provide help? And so I think, we managed to be very creative and beyond just, finding another angel check to stay alive. We were plugged into every like grant, every, shred financing source, every available dollar we could find, whether it's from an angel or not. We planted those seeds along the way, and they would just kind of flower at the right time.
Cool. Now let's.
And Marty, I just to talk a little bit more about that. I think choosing the right angels is important. Obviously, Alex, to your point, sometimes you just don't have the choice. You have to get from point A to point B, and then you'll figure out how to deal with those angels that you really didn't want in the first place. That's not a great tactic, but yeah, we've all done that. But I guess my point is, when the shit hits the fan, as it always does, you want to make sure to be surrounded by the right advisors, not just investors, but the right advisors. Not all investors are advisors. And the ones that you want around you are the ones that aren't emotional about the event. Shit happens. How you react to it is really what's important. Every single company has shit happen to it, whether it's its own making, which most of it is, or whether it's just outside influence, outside events happening. And so it's super important to stay calm and not to think about, oh, damn, my 25K that I invested in this company has been just thrown away. If you have investors that think that way, you should not call them for advice, because they're going to give you the wrong advice at the time that you need critical decision making the most.
I couldn't agree with you guys more. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to tell which angel investors are going to be the ones that are good or, let's say, nervous, because sometimes people go through different periods of their life too. I'm conscious of time, so I have two more questions. one, we've focused a lot on the journey and the bumpy road, but now that things are up and to the right, finally, how's the relationship between the two of you changed, or has it?
I'll let Roy comment on that first.
You know, I hope that listeners don't think that Marty and I are always drinking together. We're not. Nor are we always talking. We're not. You know, we have pretty good cadence for board meetings, and we have irregular cadence for just chit-chatting about what's going on. And sometimes, you know, there's stuff happening that we need more conversations, quicker conversations on. But usually Marty is a great CEO. He's really pushed his team super far. He's up to 42 people in the company. That's really him and his COO running the show, and I'm really not involved at all. But in terms of how it's changed since, you know, I've been paying more attention, because now I really don't want it to fail, right? Because now we're doing so well, we're the top in our category. It's really exciting because I like to win, and so does Marty. Who doesn't? And so I really want to make sure that I'm giving enough time and bandwidth as a board member, and not just myself, but also with the other board members, and also bringing in new board members so that we can get to that next level. And working with Marty to think about, you know, in 6 months' time, who do we need in the company to get to that next level? And I think that is super important, because now that we're achieving this massive growth, we have to figure out much farther ahead in terms of where we need to be, and actually start now, because the growth is so much faster.
Just to add on to that. So first off, I appreciate the kind words, Roy, but the whole team deserves credit, not just me and our CEO, Steve.
Yep.
So just making sure that the credit goes where it's due. You know, secondly, I think, you know, Roy's relationship, or my relationship with Roy, I think is a little unique in that Roy also sits on our board, and so you know, you know, he's been an advisor to us as well as an investor, and so I think we probably have a closer relationship with Roy than we do with most of our angel investors. So I think, you know, there's the part of the question which is about my relationship with Roy. I think there's also the part of the question of how is our relationship with the other, you know, 40 angels on our cap table, who, you know, some of whom put in money before, you know, when things were really rocky, and have seen us kind of, you know, get into what's the term, escape velocity. And I think, you know, I think when you go through that with a bunch of angels, you kind of, I wouldn't say you can do no wrong, because that would be incorrect. But I think a lot of angels are just surprised that their investment hasn't gone to zero, and so we have a lot of trust with our angels because of having gone through that survival period, and have made it out to the other side, and have really grown at the rate that we have. I think a lot of angels just trust us to operate the business. You know, when you go through that kind of experience, a couple things happen. One is, you know, because you're constantly facing down the abyss, and coming out the other side, you gain a lot of confidence in your ability to get through difficult situations. And I think, you know, investors gain that confidence in you as well when they see you get through those types of situations. They recognize that even if you have a difficult quarter or two difficult quarters in a row, they trust that you're doing everything you can to get it out on the other side. And so I've actually been really surprised that, you know, post success, let's call it, you know, how supportive investors have been, and B, hands off. They all have been. You know, obviously, as I mentioned, those were sort of qualities that we vetted for, or tried to vet for in the interview process, if you will. But beyond that, I mean, we did have to take a lot of money just because we had no other options. And despite that, we've had a really great roster of you know, supportive angels who also you know, don't breathe down our necks when things aren't going great. Alex, I think you're muted.
You're right. You think I know how to use a mic by now. I think there's a lot of important lessons you guys have shared. So the last question I have is for the audience. If they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to each of you individually? So Marty, let's go with you first. Is it Twitter? Is it email? And which one is it?
Email or LinkedIn, Marty@blockthrough.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Marty Krátký-Katz. Yeah, just go with Blockthrough, Marty@blockthrough.com. Spelling my last name out loud will take an hour.
Roy?
Twitter, LinkedIn, find me on there.
Yeah, you want to give your handle on Twitter?
Roy Map.
Okay, there you go. So just reach out to you. And are you still at angel investing currently?
I am. I mean, I'm a little busy. So Calendar Hero was just acquired by Vendasta. Whoa, hold on, the other way. There you go. And I'm a little busy right now, so I haven't even come to terms with what my daily routine should be and how much time should I be given to angel investing.
So give you 6 months is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, Q1 of next year for sure.
Perfect.
I'll be above water.
Roy and Marty, thank you so much for joining us today. I think your perspectives are extremely important for founders about to go raise from angel investors, and there's a lot of knowledge shared. For everyone else, if you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter where we highlight some amazing companies, people, and news from the tech ecosystem. And if you want to meet who's in our community today, stay around and network for about the next half an hour. We're going to open the networking sessions in a few minutes, and you're feel free to join them. Thank you and have an awesome day.